Well, hello there! We're so glad you dropped in. Everyone's been wondering, what's the buzz? Today we've got the buzz on bees. Bees are fuzzy, hardworking insect friends. They're typically gentle if we move slowly and don't do anything to threaten them, and they even help people to keep the world fed. Are you curious about them? Let's take a closer look together in today's episode of the Learn, Dream, Do show. Are you ready? Let's go!
What's the buzz? Pollen, of course! Bees make excellent pollinators because most of their life is spent collecting pollen. That pollen is a source of protein that feeds their beautiful offspring. When a bee lands on a flower to drink its nectar, hair all over the bee attracts grains of pollens through electrostatic forces. It works in the same way as when I rub a balloon on my hair and then hold it over this plate of sugar. The sugar is attracted to the balloon because of the static electricity. The bees collect the pollen from all over their body and move it to their legs. You can see the yellow bump in this picture. That's a clump of pollen. The bees will then go to the next flower and some of that pollen will fall off. Voila! That flower is now pollinated. Pollination is how plants reproduce to make seeds or fruits. Plants, for the most part, can't pollinate themselves. They require the assistance of bugs, bats, birds, and bees. It's scary to think about, but if we didn't have bees, a lot of the food that we eat might not get pollinated. These include okra, kiwi, potatoes, celery, starfruit, Brazil nut, beet, mustard, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. Wow, that's a lot. You might have heard that eating local honey can help with seasonal allergies because the honey might have small amounts of pollen that the bees have collected. However, there isn't much evidence that this is true because bees don't use pollen to make honey. That doesn't matter to me though, I still enjoy adding honey to my peanut butter banana sandwiches.
What is a bee's favorite composer?
Beethoven, of course.
Beethoven keeps us busy.
Bees are so helpful for our environment. As Ian mentioned earlier, we know bees are great for more than just making honey. They're important pollinators and help plants to grow. Bees drink the nectar of flowers, and their fuzzy little bodies collect pollen to move from one plant to another. That nectar becomes honey in the hive, and the pollen transferred by the bees sipping from each flower helps plants to grow.
Plants need to be pollinated to produce lots of types of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and flowers. They create a really big part of the world's food supply. Bees are the very best pollinators. Once a bee drinks lots of flower nectar, she brings it back to the hive where it gets deposited in an empty section of comb. The bees then use their wings to help the water evaporate, and eventually that nectar becomes honey. When it's done, the bee adds a wax cap on it to keep the honey fresh. Honey is winter food for bees, and when people make hives with extra room, bees make enough for the hive and for people. Bees and beekeepers have a symbiotic relationship. That means bees and people work together and have a positive relationship where each side gets something good. Humans build hives for them to live in, protect them from predators, and help keep the hives clean and pest-free. And bees pollinate plants and make honey. Beekeepers also help the bees make new, fresh comb every few years to help them stay happy and healthy, because old comb can be really small inside, so the bees end up being smaller than they should be. The old comb can also hold diseases or mite treatment medicine, which isn't good to leave inside the hive. One of the other ways the keeper takes care of the bees is by feeding them sugar syrup or pollen cakes if bees don't make enough honey to last through the winter. Beehives made by people are designed so that the bees get enough food for winter and humans get to have delicious honey. See this beekeeper here? She's not even wearing gloves. Moving slow and steady and paying attention to when the guard bees feel threatened are some of the ways beekeepers stay safe as they work. They use smoke to keep the bees from sounding the alarm, and the smoke also makes the bees sleepy. Let's check out some hives. The box hive or Langstroth hive here is the most common kind we use in the United States. Often this style of hive is built with something called a queen excluder, or a gate that keeps the queen in one part of the hive. This gate keeps all the baby bees and their mother, the queen, in a specific set of boxes with a screen with holes big enough for the drones and workers, but too small for the queen to get through. This is used so the beekeeper doesn't have to worry about her or the larvae when they harvest the honey. The keeper picks up and removes the extra full honeycombs from the hive to get honey. Keeping the queen and the babies below in separate boxes means they won't accidentally pick up any brood comb with developing bees inside. This also means that the comb sections that have pollen stored inside them are less likely to be picked up. Bees need this plant pollen because it's a protein source for them. The queen bee is the biggest one in the hive, and all the workers and drones are smaller, and that's why the gate or queen excluder works. The hive is also built with something called bee space in mind. The bee space allows the beekeeper to move the comb frames without hurting the bees. Bees pretty much won't build any comb in a space that's 5 to 6/16 of an inch. When it's time to harvest the honey and they're sure the bees have enough to eat for the winter, the beekeeper takes a soft brush or other gentle bee remover instrument and brushes them off the honeycomb. The keeper inspects the frame to make sure it's only honey, takes it over to their workspace, and runs a tool down it to open the capped or finished honey. Once the honeycomb cells are open, they take it to a spinner machine called an extractor. This is one part of the process that filters the honey and takes it from the honeycomb to the grocery store or farmer's market.
Bees are usually good neighbors and won't sting you unless you scare them or threaten the hive. If you see a bee and she buzzes by you, go slow and gentle. Don't swat at her or make sudden movements. She's probably just curious. If you do get stung, don't panic. Find and remove the stinger by scraping it off with your fingernail or having your grown-up scrape the stinger off. Wash the area, apply a cold compress, and consider taking an antihistamine or allergy medication if your grown-up is okay with it to reduce the swelling and itching. Antihistamine creams are also an option. If you see a hive in your yard or shed, a professional is the best person to take care of it. Search for a bee removal service that doesn't kill our fuzzy friends, but moves them to a new home where they can keep doing what they do best.
I'm sure you know what bees look like. You've probably seen them pollinating flowers or ran from one when it got too close. The black and yellow stripes on a bee makes them easy to spot. But did you know that bees can look like this? And even that? There are over 20,000 kinds of bees in the world, and the ones that we actually see all the time are only a small group of those. The bees you may not recognize are like orchid bees, violet carpenter bees, sweat bees, cuckoo bees, and many other kinds make up 95% of the world's bees. The bees you and I usually see out and about are the honeybees and those round fluffy bees called a bumblebee. These bees are social, and this means that they live in a family or a huge colony with a queen bee. No, not that queen bee, this queen bee. The queen bee is given a special nectar, and this helps her make all the baby bees or the larvae for the hive. The colony also has thousands of girl bees called worker bees. They gather the food, create air for the colony, keep the colony organized, and gather pollen and pollinate the flowers. These girls are the busy bees that you see outside. They're working. The hives also have hundreds of boy bees called drones. The drones help the queen bee take care of the baby bees. Now that we know about the bee kingdom, let's discuss the different types of bees who live in it. A honeybee lives in a large family, and you can find them all over the world. Honeybees are special because their colony can last many years when others only last for one season. Honeybees help over 100 different types of food crops grow, and they have nests in trees or even your chimney or attic. My favorite bee species is the cute and fuzzy bumblebee, and it creates its hive on the ground, but they're also known to create hives in places like our homes and on our patios. Like honeybees, bumblebees drink nectar and pollinate flowers, and they are one bee that can sting multiple times. And last, Let's talk about a bee that's always alone or solitary, the carpenter bee. A carpenter is a person who builds and repairs structures with wood, and a carpenter bee gets its name because it has the ability to dive and drill holes into trees. These bees build nets just for themselves and are often mistaken for bumblebees. An easy way to distinguish the two is to remember that carpenter bees have a shiny dark abdomen, while bumblebees have hairy yellow ones. Bees have a reputation for stinging people, but not all bees can sting. It's hard to distinguish which bees can sting, so it's always a good idea to keep some distance away from bees and their hives.
This is a toy drone. And this is a bee, of course. What if we make a tiny flying robot the size of a bee that mimics how real bees pollinate flowers and food crops? Did you know that scientists have been trying to do just that and develop robotic bees? The robot bees use sensors and special technology to find pollen and to know which parts of a field have already been pollinated, so they work smarter, not harder.
Try this. Earlier, I told you about how bees help to pollinate plants. Let's do an experiment that you can try at home that shows this process at work. These are the supplies that you'll need for today's activity. You'll need some clear tape. You'll need either a spoon or a popsicle stick or something like that that has a handle to it. You'll need a cutout of a bee. You'll need some colored gelatin, and then you'll either need plates or bowls. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the clear tape and tape my bee to my spoon here. Again, you can use a popsicle stick, so if you wanted to glue your popsicle stick to your bee, you could do that. But I don't have any popsicle sticks around, so I'm just going to tape it on really quick, just like that. And it actually probably makes it a little easier to hold and move around. Next, I'm going to take a couple long pieces of tape and fold them over themselves, so that way we have the sticky side facing out. And I'm going to place it onto the wings. I'm going to place it onto both wings. There we go, I've placed some tape on either side of the wings, so that way the sticky side is out. Next, I'm going to take a little bit of my gelatin and sprinkle it into my plate or bowl, just like that. And I'm going to take my other color and put it into the, wow, that was a lot. That's a lot of pollen. I'm going to put it into the other plate like this. Again, you can use a bowl or a plate, it doesn't really matter. You can spread it out and just like that. You just want some to look like this. You could always do this with some salt or sugar. I did it with some gelatin, so that way I can see the colors of that gelatin. All right, now that we've gotten everything set up, we're going to pretend that we're the bee and these plates are flowers, and our bee is going to land and drink some of the nectar from one of our flowers. And as it does that, its wings are actually starting to pick up some of the pollen, which is represented by the gelatin. Now that our bee has collected some of the nectar, it also, if we flip it over, you'll notice some of the pollen has stuck to the bee's wings. And whenever we take our bee and move it over to our next flower to drink its nectar, it also will start collecting some of the pollen from this flower as well. And even some of our red pollen will land in this flower to pollinate it. So there we go, some of the pollen is stuck to our bee, just like what happens in real life. In this case, the bee would move it down onto its leg to store it to take it back to the hive. Also, if I look really closely, I can see there are some red specks here in this green pollen that tells me that some of the red from our first flower has made it over to the second flower.
Did you know?
What comes to mind when you hear the word apiary? To me, it sounds like a place where apes live, but it is actually a fancy word for beehives that are kept by apiarists or beekeepers. Both of these words have their root in the Latin word for bee, apis.
Hola todos! Hello everyone! Can you find me? Today I'm an abeja, or a bee, and I'm one of the hardest working creatures on our planet. As an abeja, my job is to fly inside all types of beautiful flores, or flowers, to collect pollen and nectar and take it back to my colmena, or hive, so the other abejas can use it as food. And guess what? When abejas like me are flying around all of those flores, we get tons of pollen on ourselves and transfer it from one flower to the next polinizando or pollinating all of these flores. Thanks to pollinators and other insects, we get fruits and seeds for more and more flores. And do you know what the sweetest part of the deal is? It's the miel, or the honey. Did you get it? But really, you don't have to be scared of abejas. We're the good guys. Just let us do our job and think of us next time you eat a spoonful of miel.
What's the difference between bees and wasps?
One way to tell the difference between bees and wasps is appearance. Wasps have a slender body that narrows at the waist area. They look like they are shiny and have a smooth body surface. Bees, on the other hand, are plumper than wasps. Bees are also hairier and their back legs are flatter. Bees have a pollen basket on their hind legs, while wasps do not. The wasp has back legs that hang down during flight, while you can't see the bee's back legs at this time. The stinger on a wasp is not barbed like a stinger on a bee. Wasps are carnivorous predators that capture other insects to feed their young in the nest. Adult wasps, however, feed on nectar, honeydew, and rotting fruit, as well as other insects. Let's play a game. Is it a bee or a wasp? I'm going to show you some fun images and videos. You can use your knowledge to yell out either bee or wasp. Get ready! Number 1. Are these bees or wasps? If you guessed bees, you are correct. Do you notice their leg baskets that are filled with pollen? How cute! Number 2. Are these bees or wasps? If you guess wasps, you are correct. Do you see their legs dangling down when they fly? That means it's a wasp. Number 3. Is this a bee or a wasp? This might seem like a trick question because this bug is on a flower. But remember, wasps can also eat nectar. This one is a wasp. Number 4. Is this a bee or a wasp? This one's tricky because it's not yellow and black, but it's a bee. Do you see how fuzzy it is? And it's also collecting pollen.
It is important to know the difference between bees and wasps because bees are less aggressive and can only sting once, while wasps can sting multiple times and are usually considered a lot more aggressive. Both insects serve a role in nature, and so it is best to walk away from them when you see them outside. I hope you can tell the difference between bees and wasps after playing our game.
To learn more about bees, ask your grown-up for permission, hop online, and check out pestworldforkids.org. Now, we've learned that bees are so much more than pests, but this pest guide on bees has lots of fun facts and shows you the differences between bumblebees, carpenter bees, honeybees, and killer bees. They're not as scary as they sound. Want some more buzz on bees? Check out these books from the Fort Worth Public Library. Our youngest viewers will love reading The Bee Book by Charlotte Milner. This book is all about honeybees and uses illustrations and diagrams to give facts about these brilliant bees and their hives. Upper elementary students may enjoy the jumbo-sized Bees, A Honeyed History by Piotr Sosha and Wojciech Grajowski. This book explores the scientific and cultural roles of bees throughout history, complete with beautiful illustrations. If you love graphic novels, check out The Way of the Hive, A Honeybee's Story by Jay Hostler. This is a story about growing up and having adventures, but it's also full of real facts about honeybees. Check it out. For more stories about bees, younger readers should check out The Bee Tree by Patricia Polacco. Mary Ellen needs a break from reading, and her grandpa takes her on a rollicking adventure outdoors, following a bee to its hive. We could all use an outdoor break sometimes. Middle schoolers might enjoy Honeybees and Frenemies by Christy Wendke. In the summer before 8th grade, Flor faces lots of changes as she's stuck at home when her best friend leaves for camp. She's working at her family store, her parents are fighting, and she's asked to compete in the local honey pageant with her ex-friend Candace. That's all for this episode. Thanks for joining us. We'll be seeing you, but it's time for us to buzz off.